This week on the 77% Street Debate.
We are speaking about the impact of westernization towards our daily lives as Ugandans.
We keep singing that culture is dying, culture is dying.
It's Africans who are eroding their own culture.
I was punished twice for speaking my local language. You know, those days they would put a dress on you, a badge on you to indicate that you were found speaking a local language in a compound. There have been efforts to decampaign African languages and local languages in particular.
We're having this conversation in English for starters, and one fiber of culture is language. If we are having this conversation in English, what are we still trying to defend?
We've been having a talk that a woman is not supposed to eat chicken and eggs.
Right, okay. Let's settle this chicken situation once and for all. Hello and welcome back to the 77% Street Debate. This week we are back in Uganda's capital of Kampala. Now this is a city that's steeped in traditional culture, but you wouldn't know that walking around because like many capitals across Africa, it's also living in a modern time. And so today we're asking, are African cultures at risk of being erased in the quest for globalization? And who better to answer this question for me than Ugandans here? And I want to start with Kia because when we had a conversation earlier, you said something very interesting about what you think the role of culture is in society. So in your family, what role does culture play?
It plays a role when it comes to discipline, when it comes to morals, when it comes to way of behavior. So culture to get rooted into the young people, it has to begin from home. For example, me, I'm a Langi by tribe. I've grown up from Kasese, from Western Uganda. My mom is from the East. So when you get to see that whole combination, you think, I'll not know my mother language. Yes, I know Langi. I can speak Langi fluently. When I'm in Northern Uganda, I can speak the language. But why am I able to do all this? Because my father taught me from day one. If you greeted you in Langi, Itieningo, and you reply him, I'm fine, you're going to get a smack on your head. So if you're speaking of society and the cultural leaders are speaking of them, the issue being with young people, the issue is actually with them. Now,
okay, so before we address the issue in totality, I just want to understand, because not everybody lives in a cultural home. So what does that look like for you? Is that when you're having birthdays? Is it when there's marriages? When do you really feel this culture?
Culture is actually felt during traditional ceremonies. That is during emikolo, what they call emikolo among the Baganda, the traditional marriage. So the only time I would know that agomesi exists properly is when there's a traditional marriage. And then these elders who tell us to dress like in traditional wears, and that they're actually dressed in that traditional wear. Now that means that we are only shown and we are made to believe that culture should only be portrayed during traditional ceremonies, right? If you come dressed in your skinny pants, I will actually send you away, but you cannot tell me to come for a grand party and you expect me come dressed in agomesi. What are you trying to tell me? Because that's what society has shown us.
Agomesi is the traditional Ugandan garb, regalia. Yes. All right, so let's move to Faith here for a little bit because you come from an extremely traditional home and what Kia is talking about here is not new for you, right? But you have a very different interpretation of it. Tell us a little bit about that.
My grandmother would wear her agomesi every time. It felt like it was the only dress she knew. And then I had a great-grandmother who would do the exact same thing. My mother wears her gomesi to almost every function she's been invited to. I've grown up in a home that's very, very traditional. You have to kneel when you greet. You have to kneel when you serve. You have to do certain things the way they are meant to do. Your clothes are supposed to be a certain height. You're supposed to speak your language. You're supposed to, it's so cultural to a point that there even gender roles attached to men and women because of culture. Culturally, a man is like a god. We see him as he's up there, and so if I'm talking to a man, I'm going to be kneeling. There are particular parts of the chicken that only the man eats, and as a woman, you shouldn't eat them. And also, growing up, I used to see my grandmother refuse to partake of chicken because it's meant for the men. But then growing up, I feel like, I don't want to do all that.
Yeah, okay. Oh, wow. Whoa, Gabriel.
It's not right to misinform. We are a cultural society that is culturally stranded because of the political question. We are not Ugandans by choice. We are Ugandans just by the virtue of colonialism. We are brought together not by our choice, not because that we decided. So, because we are mixed up, someone comes here and their cultural incompetences are pushed onto others. In Uganda here,
Wait, what do you mean when you say cultural incompetences?
you know what I detest in my society, and you do it. I find it as an incompetence in my society. Here in Uganda per se, we respect women to the fact that the biggest. Wait a minute, because even in the hierarchy of our kingdom, the four most big offices in the kingdom belong to women with land, title, and authority attached to it. For instance, I can tell you.
Hold on, let me let the Baganda women speak for themselves.
Oh, for starters, not just, it's everywhere, not just Baganda. Inebantu got married, and when did she come out to see the people? She's not even allowed to just go around talking anyhowly. The queen of the kingdom of Busoga, she's not even allowed to go talking to people anyhowly. Do you know that our queen can't even stay in the same kingdom with the king because women are supposed to be treated a certain kind of way? Maybe he's talking about the parliament and the government. We do have people there, but if he's talking about the kingdom, I think he's misinformed.
Okay, all right. Before we make this a debate about men versus women, let me come to you, Andrew, because when we were speaking, you made the point that, look, what are we even defending? What culture? Like, these laws and rules that we are following, who came up with them? How far back do they go? Tell me a bit about that.
Personally, I believe culture is the way of life. The problem is that most of the times when we're talking about culture in Africa, we talk about it in a traditional way. We talk about it what we wear. For example, like we might tell you that we are in a cultural center because there are a couple of arts, but culture is more than that. It's the food, it's what we say, it's the way we talk. So when you look at Africa, since we were colonized all those years back, and you look at Africa today, what exactly are we trying to preserve? Like, I mean, we're having this conversation in English for starters, and one fiber of culture is language. If we are having this conversation in English, if most of us are wearing these garbs which we do not even know where they came from, not wearing the hides and skins, what are we still trying to defend?
Okay.
In 2023?
Let me give Henry a chance. Henry, by the way, is a veteran journalist and also an educator in matters tradition.
Yes, I would like to support what my colleague has just said on language, and that's where I want to start from. I think my concern really is indigenous language is dead completely because of Western languages.
But, I mean, can you say that because here in Kampala, majority of the people don't speak English or Swahili, they speak Luganda?
Yes, I speak Luganda, and most of the people here in Kampala speak Luganda, but that's not their traditional language. You find the Karamojong from Karamoja, Kasese from the Bakonjo, the Batoro, they are all in Kampala, and they have lost out. They can't speak their traditional indigenous language. How do you imagine a Mutoro speaking Rutoro in Kampala? People think you are a villager, first of all. You are not educated. Number two, and because of that, and then the Western languages, English is now coming in. You also hear French has come in, Arabic has come in. So they're overshadowing everything. You saw recent examinations. You must pass English to be seen an elite person. So I am really feeling sorry for that. You don't find many Acholis in Kampala speaking Acholi.
Okay,
yes.
All right.
That's the character which is going on.
Yes.
The issue is people should emulate who they are and be proud and be what they are. Language, culture just like language, it is the issue of choice. No one has ever been arrested in this country for speaking their language. No one has ever been arrested for dressing how they are. Some things came because of bullies in culture. Yes, in our traditions, we've been having bullies. Like, for instance, we've been having a talk that a woman is not supposed to eat chicken and eggs. But it is not written anywhere. It is not within our lines. And in Uganda, it is detested. A woman is supposed to be treated like any other human being. But the modernists who came in here to screw us up, they came to pick the bad part about us, to preach the bad gospel, to make us look as if we are pushing the women, children.
All right. Okay. Let's settle this chicken situation once and for all. Okay? Because I don't want us to talk about it again. Kia, let me give you a chance to respond because you raised your hand.
to that argument of the whole thing, because I would totally agree that it has been a general problem in Africa, in Uganda as well. Women, even as he stated earlier in his argument, that there are female leaders in positions, but trust me, those female leaders are still marginalized. Why? Because of the cultures that were there back then, because of the previous cultures. So him saying that the women have actually been included, it has always been a general problem. Go to any traditional home, a woman is marginalized. Just
okay, but let me ask a question that Andrew raised. You know, when we talk about culture, it's just the general evolution of a people. Yes. So when you say previous cultures, when does a previous culture end and begin?
Now, the previous culture, I would say, is how they used to behave in the past days. Right now, it's an evolutionary era. The season is there's an evolution happening right now. So as Africans, we should stop the blame game of the Western culture is influencing us. We have these very resources. We have the internet. We have all these things. How many times will we hear of an African fashion gala, an African fashion show that is going viral? No one is really bothered. The problem is not with the Western culture. We need to take the exact place there.
I get your point.
One of the things I've heard so much already is everyone is talking about, they're talking about the gomesi as a traditional dress, and then the kanzu was the alternative for men. But these things were not even designed by Baganda to begin with. The gomesi wasn't designed by Baganda, and neither is its material from here. The material is from usually India, and even the material for the kanzu is from India. So just for starters, that's not even our traditional dress. Someone gave it to us.
You see, that's why it comes in. So it's them who are eroding culture on their own. This is all they have taught us. This is all they have taught us. Nothing else has been taught to us. You understand? They ran away from their culture and they drove us with them. So what we know and now they're telling us is non-culture is on them. So the people themselves are eroding culture. Before they blame modernization about languages being eroded because of modernization, let's talk about intermarriages. Which language is the child supposed to learn growing up? So these people who came before us eroded culture, and now they're blaming modernization. Because all I've known as culture out here is gomesi, the mushanana, the kanzu. And if he's telling me today, you want us to wear a back cloth and walk half naked?
Okay, that's Henry, that's a good question. I just want to come back to you for a second because there's an important point that Faith is raising there, that we're all sort of adapting a watered down version of some kind of culture. So what do you have to say to that, looking to the future? Should we blame young people for not taking on what we now know as our culture?
No, I think we may not have to blame the people, but we have to blame the international communities, which has come up to unify us. They are calling it a global village now. And a colleague of mine earlier, I want to put a radar. He said that you can't be punished for a local language. It's not true. So I was punished twice for speaking my local language. Those days they would put a dress on you. Yeah, a badge on you to indicate that you were found speaking a local language in a compound. So there have been effort to decampaign African languages and local languages in particular.
Okay,
and that's my challenge.
Let me hear from Catherine, and then I'd like to hear some thoughts from the back, please.
I would like to state that in 1966, President Milton Obote abolished kingdoms. So that was the beginning of the end as we see it. So when the kingdoms were abolished, they were later reinstated by Museveni in 1993. So you can see the gap, the years, people not practicing tradition, the kingdom is closed, you don't know who is your king, your princess, you're just there, right? And then when it comes, some kingdoms were not re-established. For example, the Ankole kingdom, where I come from. So I don't know where the king is, I don't know where the prince is. I hear we have a princess somewhere, I don't know where she is. So can I come? That's why you're educated to learn about your culture. So for example, what I learn now is what I find on the farm in the village, but that is not necessarily what they practiced in the 1900s, right? So it has been changed and changed. Unlike you in Buganda, who still has your culture and your kingdom and your king, I have none.
All right, okay. Let me ask Faith an important question here, which is that, yes, what is the importance of these symbolisms of... oh, are you guys hitting on each other on my pan? So what is the importance of these symbols in culture? Because like you're saying, the kingdom, does it have a place in modern day society?
It does. I mean, the UK has a king. a king as the overall. So it does have a place in modern society. But it doesn't have to be too rigid to change some of their practices, you understand? We are not saying that culture should go away. We are just saying they should adapt to the modernization. And when we are trying to adapt, they should not judge the ones who are adapting, you understand? So now when I show up for a party in my high sleeve dress and it's a traditional party, it should not be a crime that I'm not wearing a gomesi. You understand? We are just saying they do have a place in the modern society, but they should be ready to adapt.
Okay, so at what level do we adapt? Because it sounds to me like we want to do all the things that are easy, the clothing, the ceremonies around marriage and naming children. What about politics? What about medicine? Yeah, somebody, please. Hey, yes, somebody talk to me.
Okay, me, according to me, I think like modernization to a greater percentage does not affect culture really much, because you can do your culture as long as you can be with your phone, you can do anything which is modern as long as preserving your culture. You can eat your traditional food, you can dress in your traditional wear. As you're using internet, as you're on WhatsApp, you're doing any modern thing you want to do. You can do anything, like anything, even the local drinks, the dress code, the what. But it is, I think, the way we are brought out nowadays, it's Africans who are eroding their own culture. Because when you go to school, first of all, they want you to speak English throughout. When you speak your local language, it's a burden. Like they want to punish you. So you'll be with all this fear, you'll be like, and then there's this thing, Africans, when you speak, fellow Africans, you speak your local language, like I'm Acholi. I'm speaking Acholi, and then someone says, you see? Then you be like, now me, when I speak Acholi, they're going to tell me, Every time I speak Acholi, among Ugandans, they be like, So that thing is like bullying by fellow Africans, you see? Okay. So it affects the language part. Okay. Then, maybe you're eating your traditional food among your fellow Africans. Maybe you're eating greens. They want you to eat chicken. Exotic, they want you to eat chips which they didn't know before. When you bring your greens, Africans be like, what is that? They start mocking you. You see, it's Africans who are contributing to these things. You can be modernized at the same time observing.
Yeah, okay, I like that. All right, so you don't have to choose. Stay traditional, but also stay modern. There were some views at the back there, yeah? Let's come here. So culturally, those days before, a woman was expected to go back home, cook for the husband, take care of the children. But these days there is an aspect of work. A woman has to go to work. The husband is also going to work. So they come back late and they have to just go buy food. Then we also talk about the family setting. Parents these days, they grow up talking to their kids in English. And the kids also believe that, when they want to, maybe when they go to the villages, they cannot even communicate to their elders like grandparents, and that is really a big problem. Okay, so for you, it's about language, it's about social structures and sort of the roles in that society. I like that. There was some other point here.
I think we are speaking about the impact of westernization towards our daily lives as Ugandans. A woman would actually want to look modernized by adding a booty.
By adding a what?
A booty. Is this part of our culture? That is westernization. Where did it draw from? From the Western world. We are looking at the implication of Western life towards our very own life that we live here in Uganda. I think we are losing the context of this topic.
Okay, all right. Let me come back to Gabriel for a second. But before I do, right, I think it's fair to say that so far what we are agreeing on is that culture sort of seeps into one another, right? Yeah. We adopt and we let go of some, and we adopt and we let go of some, right? Yeah. And so now I want us to talk about it in practical terms. Kia, you're really defending tradition and culture. What are some of the things where for you, if they did not exist at all in your life, it just wouldn't be the same culturally?
It's still a major role to the elders to make sure the children get to know their identity as the various tribes. Like maybe my father did a good job teaching me Langi, so should other parents teach their children their languages as well as evolve as they learn the English from school. So from home you have the role to teach them that language. Now, coming to the kind of food, we as Africans need to appreciate our food as us. So now if you go around the streets of Kampala and go to any hotel and ask for malakwang, which is a northern food, you will hardly find it, right? And yet we keep singing that culture is dying, culture is dying. The very same person cooking these modern foods and doesn't even take the initiative to to cook this local food is still complaining about the erosion of culture by a Western man who is not even in your house.
Okay, but let me ask, Andrew, is it fair to expect, I don't know how long it takes to cook malakwang, but some of my traditional foods, you need hours over the stove. Does that make sense with the kinds of schedules that we have?
As time moves on and as we evolve and pick on new things, some of these things we want to hang on to should be let go. Because, I mean, why are we dying so hard to keep some of these things?
Yeah.
Like, it's important to keep some things, but it's important when those things are relevant.
All right, but my question is, if we allow so many things to die out and sort of fall by the wayside, what's going to separate us from Europeans, from Asians, from Americans?
Africa was set up to forget its culture. I don't know if they intended it, but the way Africa is set up, most African countries usually have that one city, which is usually more developed than the others. Other people come in and start working together. The moment you start mixing, it's so hard to maintain a culture when you're mixed up. Okay. So it's always up to everyone who is at home to actually maintain culture at home, not the society.
Okay, so how do we maintain culture? I'll come to you, but how do we maintain culture in a way that doesn't feel oppressive, Faith? In a way that feels like you have a choice if you want to wear your official clothes, if you want to wear whatever it is or eat whatever it is, that you won't be dejected by your family. By the way, what would happen if you told your family you no longer want to follow the customs?
I wouldn't want to know what would happen. Yeah. I really wouldn't want to know. Because that would mean you're forgetting who you are, you're deserting your people. You just want to be like the white people, which is not true. Because non-practicing the cultures doesn't mean I'm not a Suko anyways. Yeah. But how do we maintain culture? We can constantly remind the children that, okay, traditionally, this is how we cook this meal. This meal is prepared like this traditionally and all that. But I do not have to cook the same meal every day for it to be culture in the home. Like there's some homes where matoke, like my home, matoke must be cooked. Matoke, when you peel it, it comes with sticky things on your hands. And after you've peeled, you have to squeeze it. You're squeezing hot banana leaves. And yet I could just cook rice and supper is done. So let's make it, we can maintain culture in a way that we have to understand that you are teaching the child, but you do not have to force the child to do what you're teaching them every day. It becomes a punishment. We will now start to look at culture as a punishment instead of looking at it in its beauty.
Yeah. Some voices at the back here.
The modern world is set in that it works for you quick. If I'm sick, I'll go to the hospital, they're giving me tabs. But way back in the days, my granny would just go to the bush, pick something that would work for him. There's no way I'm going to wake up and go to the bush and pick that because I have to go to the hospital and do that. Sometimes we even feel like now going back to because I would love to stay in Kampala because Kampala is so good. I have everything. I would go to the cinema. I would get everything I feel like I need. But then when you tell me go back to the village, meet Granny, Granny is going to tell me to go to the garden.
Okay, so this is interesting. So in order for culture to exist, there has to be hardship. Too much modern conveniences is not good for culture. Kinda, all right. As we conclude, can we please move this way a little bit? As we conclude, I want to ask a simple question. How do we make sure that we're not losing the best parts of our culture to westernization or to globalization? Let me start with you, Henry.
Yeah, I think we need to also to review our curriculum. Our curriculum, not necessarily for here in Uganda, but focusing on Africa as a continent. The black people, let me put that way, that's a better word. Black people, we need a curriculum that raises and sustains the black people. It's very unfortunate because I want to know for America, India, whatever, which country in European countries have ever adopted African cultures. I don't know whether there's one. Why is everything westernized? Even the laws we are using for elections in Africa are European based. You know, so human rights, for example, are European based. They are not ours, our traditional human rights. So my concern is we are losing out everything to the Western world as if we do not exist actually. Okay. So we need a new syllabus that promotes our own indigenous culture, indigenous knowledge, indigenous existence, and above all, the black people.
All right. So, Kia, how do we retain our African identity and culture even as we participate in the global world?
The best way to do this is let's accept that there's a lot of change happening as Africans. Get something that we identify ourselves with, what we believe as we know. That is the way we eat, the way we dress, and have it moving forward. And this comes from the roots of our parents right at home. Let's stop blaming the Western culture. Their culture is beautiful. Like, ladies and gentlemen, how would you feel if somebody told you your culture is ugly? No, everyone's culture is beautiful. We need to accept theirs and make ours beautiful.
Okay, so be the ambassadors that we want to see. Yes. All right, Faith?
I think maintaining culture starts with you, the person. It starts with each and every one of us. We all have cultures we've seen growing up, and if we want to maintain these cultures, is we carry them on. You and your family should practice your culture the way you want to. Okay. But as you're practicing your culture, you should also remember that the world is going modern.
All right. And finally, Andrew, in the beginning, we did say that you said, what is there to preserve? Having heard everything that's been said, have you changed your mind on that?
When we say that African culture is being influenced, we do not have to forget that African culture is also influencing people elsewhere. Yeah. Like today, people are listening to a lot of Afrobeats. Chris Brown is releasing Afrobeat music, and because they are listening to what Africa is doing, and they are trying to do it. Yeah. So as we are being influenced, we are also influencing someone else.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, we did ask if the African culture is being erased or being threatened by westernization. And the answer today is that culture is a process of giving and taking. But what I did hear as well is that Mwachamila Nimtumwa said in another way, he who leaves their culture is a slave. Thank you for watching.